Good evening. I want to start off by just saying a big thank you to the elders here and to the congregation for having me come in and speak. This is my first time speaking here at Trenton, and it's definitely a privilege to see all my friends out there in the audience. I know many of you have spent many times with y'all, whether it's at camp or whether it's just spending time here together and worship at meetings and whatnot. Really appreciate, again, the opportunity. Never thought I'd be asked to come into the Vatican of Gilchrist County and actually get to preach. I'm right down the road at Midway, I say. You knew I had to throw it in there. Where's Ken? I had to throw it in there. Ecclesiastes chapter 11 and 12 is kind of where we're going to spend our time this evening. This lesson is primarily geared towards the younger people, and I'll let you, like I tell Midway when I'm talking about younger and older people and I'm separating them, I'll let you decide where you fit in that. Whether you want to call yourself a young person or an older person, that is for you to decide. But I want to start off, again, today we are speaking on grace, and specifically when I'm enjoying my grace, how I need to continue growing my faith. I need to make that decision. I'll start off by telling a little story. This past spring, I had the opportunity this is my second year in a row, I've had the opportunity to go to Alabama to go hunt some public land up there during the spring gobbler season up there. And I'll just say it hasn't worked out for me yet up there. I don't have a problem with finding gobbling birds. I know there's many turkey hunters here in the audience, and if you're not, we'll fill you in towards the end of it. But anyhow, I had it all worked out. The first day I got there was 2 birds there. That was pretty hot and didn't work out that day. Should have killed one of them, but it didn't. So I went back the next day. And right where I left them that day, I figured that's where they would head to, right off the limb. And so I get in position, I get all set up, and hear him start gobbling right at daybreak, and I'm thinking, all right, this is all going to work out. And I'm about 200 yards crept away from the bird instead of going to the bird. Again, it's public land. I think everything's going to work out in my favor. I sit down, and I'm just sitting here. I got myself a palmetto blind built and everything. Everything's going to go to the way that I planned it. And when I tell you, my heart, how it sunk when I heard that gunshot. And if you don't know, I'm originally from Taylor County, born and raised down the road in Perry. And there's a distinct sound that a turkey makes when he falls from a tree limb and lands in water. Highly illegal. You're not supposed to shoot a bird out of the roost. Well, I heard that sound. And so I was pretty upset, to say the least. At that instance, I realized everything that I planned for, everything that I intended on happening that morning was not going to go the way that I intended it to. And isn't that the same with life? Life doesn't always work out the way that we think it should. All it takes is one person or maybe one event that changes our life, it changes our plans forever. I want you to think about Proverbs 16, verse 9. Again, it's a passage you may be familiar with. We're going to primarily be in Ecclesiastes 11 and 12, but there's the old proverb in Proverbs 16, 9. You probably heard it said, man plans and God laughs. We may think we have it all figured out when we're young, but your life can certainly change in the blink of an eye. There are too many young people who think they can put growing into a mature Christian, and when I say growing into a mature Christian, what I mean is attending services regularly. Maybe it's growing with personal Bible study. Maybe it's going and evangelizing to others. We can put that stuff aside. We can work on that after we're having all the fun in life. That's for the later on down the road time. But my challenge to you this evening is to choose right here and right now towards that path of growth. Right now's the time to be growing. Right now's the time to be making those decisions. Ecclesiastes 11, I'm going to read chapter 11 beginning in verse 9 through chapter 12 verse 1, and I'm going to read this from the NLT translation, a New Living Translation. It just simplifies it a little bit for us. So it may be a little bit different in your Bibles, but if you would, just follow along. Young people, it's wonderful to be young. Enjoy every minute of it. Do everything that you want to do. Take it all in. But remember that you must give an account to God for everything that you do. So refuse to worry and keep your body healthy. But remember that youth with a whole life before you is meaningless. Don't let the excitement of your youth cause you to forget your Creator. Honor Him in your youth before you grow old and say life is not pleasant anymore. We'll stop there. We may see younger people making decisions, and maybe we're the ones making those decisions, and we say things, and these are some things, again, we may have said in the past. Oh, well, they'll come around someday. They're making that bad spiritual decision right now, but they'll come around someday. Or maybe they're just young. I did stupid stuff one time too when I was young, and they'll find a way out of it. Hopefully they'll figure it out soon. Maybe we've said those things before. But it seems to me from this passage that Solomon's missing the point of those statements. That's not what he's saying here, is maybe one day they'll figure it out. What is he saying? He's saying right now you need to figure this out. The matter of growing our faith is not something we should be giving patience to. It seems to be an urgent matter. It's a right here, right now deal to Solomon. There's several reasons why we need to be prioritizing our growth as Christians while we're young. The first one I have for you this evening is that learning is just simply easier when we're younger. We go to school when we're young because our mind is like a sponge. The first several years of your life, you are remembering so many things that you never can learn as fast as you do those first several years of your life, especially before you even go to school. But when you go to school, you still learn better than you are when you are older. It's when we're young that we choose the careers that we're going to go into because we're going to tailor our education towards our specific job sector that we're going into. Why should we not want to seek after God now and choose Him after the vanity of worldly lust? Isn't that what verse 9 is all about? In verse 9 of chapter 11, just backing up there, switching now to the New King James, it says, "Rejoice, O young man, in your youth, and let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. Walk in the ways of your heart and in the sight of your eyes. But know that for all these God will bring you into judgment." Doesn't mean that we can't enjoy our life when we're young. Doesn't mean we can't have fun, we can't do the fun things. What it means is I'm going to do it knowing that I'm serving God. I'm going to put God first in my life. Chapter 12, verse 1 puts it, "Remember now your Creator in the days of your youth, before the difficult days come and the years draw near and you say, I have no pleasure in them. Enjoy your life, but remember your God." And sidebar point for you parents out there, you can't remember unless you're taught in the first place. Be teaching your children these things so that one day they can always come back and remember their God if they choose the wrong path. Learning's easier when you're young, but something else about life is it's just simpler. It's a whole lot simpler when you are young. We wear many titles in our life. It starts out maybe you are son or daughter when you exit the womb. And then later on, maybe you're brother or sister, and then it only escalates from there. Maybe you grow into being dad or mom, grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, and so on and so forth. The older you get, the more responsibilities, the more titles that is added to your life, the more responsibilities arise. It is in chapter 12 and verse 1, again, he says that very thing. Life only gets more challenging. He then goes on, beginning in verse 3 through several of the verses there to follow, to talk about what those challenges look like. You get older and things start to hurt. Ask some of the people here in the audience. They will tell you these things. The older that you get, you don't enjoy life the same that you do when you're young, or at least you don't do it in the same ease that you did. Well, it's true you can always come back to God. Isn't it a whole lot easier if you just went ahead now and chose for yourself that you're going to build your life around your God? Life with God is a whole lot easier than a life without God. If you look in Proverbs chapter 3, a very familiar proverb, probably one of the most familiar ones. Proverbs chapter 3 and verse 5. Solomon is trying his best to teach his son, probably at this time Rehoboam, what it's going to look like to be a good godly ruler, and he is trying to impart this wisdom to his son. Sadly, his son's not going to listen too well to it. But in Proverbs chapter 3, down in verse 5, he is telling him, trust in the Lord with all of your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. And in all your ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct your paths. God provides the guidance. He provides the direction in your life. If we're seeking the things of this world and we're listening to people of this world over maybe the godly people that's in this audience, the elders of this congregation, we choose to live a life ourselves that the world is the author of. Let's look and see what the earthly shepherds look like. In Jeremiah chapter 10. Jeremiah chapter 10, down in verse 21. Judah is about to get hauled off into captivity. They're kind of in the process of it right now, and he's telling them the very reason why this is going on, why their life is going to get a whole lot harder. Verse 21. For the shepherds have become dull-hearted, and they have not sought the Lord. Therefore they shall not prosper. And all their flocks shall be scattered. Behold, the noise and the report shall come, and a great commotion out of the north country, to make the cities of Judah desolate, a den of jackals. O Lord, I know the way of man is not in himself, is not in the man who walks to direct his own steps. The people of Judah decided to put their faith in the wrong kind of shepherds. Because of that, they're about to be led somewhere they really don't want to be led to. Their lives are going to get a lot harder. And God's whole point to this through the prophet Jeremiah is, if you just would have listened to me and followed me, your life wouldn't be so hard. A life with God is a whole lot easier than a life without. Back to a hunting example. I use these pretty regular. Sorry about that. At least it's this and not like hardcore book knowledge like a lot of preachers do. Like let me quote Socrates for you. Or no, let's talk about hunting. Let's get back to hunting. Every year, about this time, I go out in the woods and I sweat myself to death to try to clean up my deer trails, or at least the path that I take to get to my tree stands. And because I usually drive my truck back there and I pour corn out. And what I routinely do is the only limbs that I will cut is the limbs that smack my window every time, and I let it smack it about 5 times before I go out there and I cut a couple of them. Wouldn't it be a whole lot easier if I went back and actually really trimmed it out, so maybe if I kept up with it a little bit and I don't have to watch those limbs slap my truck every time I go through there, or slap myself? Imagine if you left that, though, just a couple years. And you allow those couple limbs to keep festering to the point you don't recognize the trail anymore. In Matthew chapter 7, Jesus paints a similar imagery in the Sermon on the Mount. Matthew chapter 7 and verse 13. There's 2 paths that we can take. I think it's needed for our young people today to take the path now while we can notice it. And let's keep up with that path. Then in Matthew 7 and verse 13, he says, enter by the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction. And there are many who go in by it, because narrow is the gate and difficult is the way which leads to life. And there are only a few who's going to find it. The longer that we wait around to grow our faith or our commitment to God, or maybe even just committing to God in the first place, making that initial decision, the longer that we allow that decision to fester, the more difficult it's going to be to find the already narrow path. Choose today that you're going to live your life for God again, because it's a lot easier than one without God. Another reason we need to be prioritizing growing in our faith while we're young is because this life is so short. And if you don't believe that, wait till you have kids. I've come to find out. Everybody's asking me, how big's the twins? I said, oh, I don't know. They're running around here somewhere. It's crazy to even say that. 15 months on the 13th. That is crazy to me. Life flashes before our eyes so fast. Psalm 39, if you'll turn to Psalm 39 for a moment. In Psalm 39, down in verse 4, look and see how David talks about life, how quickly life goes by. Psalm 39, down in verse 4. Lord, make me to know my end, and what is the measure of my days, that I may know how frail that I am. Indeed, you have made my days as handbreadths, and my age is nothing before you. Certainly every man is at his best state a vapor. Surely every man walks about like a shadow. Surely they busy themselves in vain, and they heap up for themselves riches, and does not know who will gather them. I just talked about preachers talking about people who we may not be as interested in, and here I am putting Shakespeare up here on the board. I got my notes from Kent on this area here. Sorry about that. Or was it Everett? As Shakespeare is quoted as saying about the brevity of life, he says, out, out, brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow. A poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, then is heard no more. Shakespeare just said, and as David said in Psalm 39, life goes by so fast. We're already frail is the way that David puts it there in Psalm 39, verse 4. Let me know how frail that I am right now, that I may live for you. Life is so short. And the most important reason that I have on here is that we're not guaranteed tomorrow. Forming our relationship with God is, again, an urgent matter, as Solomon, going back to what Solomon said in Ecclesiastes 11 and 12 earlier in the sermon. He tells us it is an urgent matter. Choose today to remember your God. It is in Ecclesiastes 11, as we again started with, we're going to be judged for our conduct. Big reason why we remember our God in our youth. We can enjoy it. We need to have fun in our youth. We need to prioritize, again, the fun things of this life. Have fun. But you better have God at the forefront of it. Because, verse 9, rejoice in your youth. Let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. Walk in the ways of your heart and in the sight of your eyes. But, verse 9, know that for all these things God will bring you into judgment. Therefore remove sorrow from your heart. Put away evil from your flesh. For childhood and youth are vanity. We are not guaranteed tomorrow. Another passage in James chapter 4, if you turn to James chapter 4 for a moment. James chapter 4, down in verse 13. James 4:13, come now, you who say today or tomorrow we will go to such a city and spend a year there, buy and sell and make a profit. Whereas you do not know what will happen tomorrow. For what is your life? Is it even but a vapor that appears for a little time and then vanishes away? If we are saving our dedication to God for when our youth slows down, then we're playing a dangerous game of roulette, and you can't afford the game. People wait for the opportune time for many different things in life. You got to wait for the right time to get married, right? You got to wait, make sure you get your education out of the way so you can get married. Maybe it's to have a baby. You know, you got to wait. You got to have your house. And by the way, got to wait for the right time to build your house. Got to wait for the right time to have your kid. Got to wait for the right time, and before you know it, there's a lot of times that you're waiting on that is never going to get there. It's never the right time to do any of those, by the way, is what I've come to find out. Oh yeah, I've got in here on my notes too, it's never We never need to wait on the time to buy the new bow either. Kendon, I'm talking to you after service, by the way. Buy the new bow. The preacher said it, so my wife can't get upset with me doing it. If you're waiting for the right time, you're never going to find it. And so 2 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 2. When is the best time to find this faith, this growing faith, to grow it, in fact, to maybe just initially respond to it in the first place? Paul has probably the longest invitation that a preacher makes, especially in his epistle, because he really starts in chapter 5 with his closing statements in the book of 2 Corinthians, and he goes through the rest of the book. That's his long invitation. He says in chapter 6, verse 2, "It's an acceptable time I have heard you, and in the day of salvation I have helped you. Behold, now is the accepted time. Behold, now is the day of salvation." Choose today to receive the salvation that your God has died to give you. Choose right now to grow that faith if you have already responded. Looking back to the story that I began with, if I went back in time and I did things differently, would I have killed that gobbler? I can't say that. I definitely think I probably would have had a shot at it, or maybe would have got really irritated with a guy if I was really close to him and I watched him do what he did. But I can't say if I did things differently, I would have killed the turkey. If you live your life without putting God first and you choose not to seek greater faith, will you ever come to regret it? Yes, you will. If you choose to grow your faith in God right here, right now when you're young, will you ever regret it? Absolutely not. You will be prepared for whatever comes your way. I want to close by looking at Romans 8. I'm just going to read 2 verses, so I know many of you put your Bibles away. I'm like Paul. I start out with an invitation and then boom, right back into it. Romans chapter 8. Romans 8 is probably one of the most chock-full, applicable passages in the entire New Testament. You could stay here and camp out and preach lesson after lesson if you wanted to, for months. But in Romans 8, Paul is really addressing towards the end of Romans 8, if we have God in our lives, what we don't have to worry about. If we have God in our lives, verse 31 and 33, I don't have to worry about my enemies. If I have God in my life and I'm growing my faith daily, verse 32, I don't have to worry about the future. If I have God in my life and I'm growing it, I don't have to worry about death, verse 34. I don't have to worry about daily threats or even getting older, as Solomon talked about in Ecclesiastes. There in Romans 8:35, as Paul says. But I want you to key in on verse 38. Paul says in Romans 8:38, "For I am persuaded that neither death nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor things created, shall be able to separate us from the love of God which is in Christ Jesus our Lord." Let me summarize those 2 verses. I don't have anything to worry about in my life if I have God in it. And if I'm centering my life around God, and if I'm prioritizing God in my youth, I have nothing to worry about. God is in control. As you, look on the back for the closing song. We don't open songbooks anymore for the invitation song. But I wanted to again stress this to you, that you need to choose right here and right now to dedicate yourself to God. If you have not done that, remember what Paul said in 2 Corinthians 6 verse 2, now is the time. Today is the day for salvation. If we can help you out with that, and whether you are young, whether you are older, today is the day. If we can get your life started or back on track with God this evening, if we can baptize you or if we can pray for you in any way, you can make your way to the front and talk to me as together we stand and sing.